about 4 weeks ago, inaugurated a team of experts from both the private and public sectors as members of the fiscal policy tax reforms. The President said the committee would be guided by national interests above all else. And President Tinubu said the country cannot continue to tax poverty or production, but focus on returns, income, and consumption. He said, and I quote, "The target is to improve Nigeria's revenue profile while making the business environment more conducive and internationally competitive. The aim is to transform the tax system to support sustainable development while at the same time achieving a minimum of 18% tax to GDP ratio within the next 3 years. The mandate, he says, is to reform Nigeria's tax administration with a target to double the collection rate within 3 years. Inaugurating the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, President Tinubu bemoaned the government's loss of trillions annually to inefficiency, corruption, and evasion. Tonight, Tuesday Live will interrogate some of these issues and other matters arising with those who should know. I'm Fisayo Ogunfui. But before we go into the conversation proper, let's take in this backgrounder put together by our business desk correspondent, Bosede Abel.
Squeezing money out of people's pocket as tax is almost as difficult as fetching water with a basket. But as a task, that must be achieved for development to take place. The reason the government at all levels have continued to evolve ways to improve on tax receipts. Aside government patrons and politicians who must submit tax clearance to be awarded contracts and run for public office at elections, a good number of people do not voluntarily pay taxes.
I feel the government will gain more when they tax luxury goods.
If we can see the benefit of that tax, we don't mind paying.
All that small tax that they are collecting from our hand before we loot, we have to pay tax and they have to collect. If they can, government can help us to do that one, to reduce that one for us.
The introduction of Finance Act regime has ushered in the use of technology to improve tax collection.
It's going to ensure transparency and accountability. Our in-house developed software called Tax Pro Max is going to have direct interface with the technology to be deployed for purpose of enumeration, for purpose of payment of the VAT, and for purpose of reporting the VAT to be collected on a daily basis. We want to believe the value addition is going to move our tax to GDP going forward.
Now, the need to upscale through harmonization of taxes and widening the tax net by bringing in more people from the informal sector has been an ongoing conversation among stakeholders in the tax community, including the Joint Tax Board, which comprises of federal and the sub-nationals.
We are encouraged with the positive milestones being achieved by the utilization strategies designed and deployed by several sub-national revenue authorities to foster the revenue harmonization drive and bring about coherence and harmony in the entire fabric of our tax revenue administration processes.
For us to actually put our hands on the issue of practically bringing the harmonization to bear in the Nigeria tax system so that we are able to make the tax environment friendly to all and sundry in Nigeria.
If government said start tomorrow, the platform is there, it's working. So what government benefit is the TIN number. You understand? So because we are not going to be paying to unknown people, unknown tax collectors again, traders is going to collect their card. We are going to enumerate them in their houses, in the streets, in the markets. So do you know the good thing about it is we are in partnership with so many associations, farmer, manufacturer, transporter, a lot of them, real estate owner, hotel owners, because we wanted to let the government know that informal sector is a viable sector that government need to look into.
While they agree and yet to implement the harmonization and codification of taxes, the political will needed to drive the processes, which seem to be bathed, as the present administration has inaugurated the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, chaired by Taiwo Oyedele and charged with the responsibility to improve the country's revenue profile and business environment, especially as the federal government moves to achieve an 18% tax to GDP ratio within 3 years.
The fundamental problem that we have with the tax system when it comes to multiple taxation emanates from the Constitution. We still remember the debate around VAT, who should collect, who should not collect. The issues now with electronic money, transfer. Sometimes you have overlap. Sometimes you have a gap. Sometimes you have conflicts in the powers to impose levies.
Paying tax is enlightened self-interest, because that's the only way you can guarantee infrastructure.
It is hoped that these reforms will increase the level of income generated into the national coffers, thereby reducing the country's debt stock. To this end, the Federal Inland Revenue Service is already blazing the trail, as it recently announced a total of revenue collection of 5.5 trillion naira for the half-year period of January to June 2023, the highest tax revenue collection ever recorded by the service in any first 6 months of a fiscal year. In Abuja, Bosede Ebo.
Thank you, Bossa, for that. We'll be joined in the studio by discussants chomping at the bit to go on this discussion, the task of interrogating tax reform and, of course, our culture in terms of revenue generation tax and all that. But let me quickly, introduce to you from the far left, Professor Ken Ife, development economist. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Especially when it comes to issues of national development. And we're also being joined by Donald Ibiu. He's the National Legal Advisor, Market Traders Association of Nigeria, Martin. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, we will also be joined via Zoom here in Abuja by Matthew Bujumbola is the Director, Coordination and Compliance, Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS. Once he comes online, we will also get him there. So thank you very much, Matthew, for joining us today. And of course, from our Sokoto Network Center, Shuaibu Idris, Managing Director, Timeline Consults, and an expert in the field of collection. Thank you very much for joining us as well. So gentlemen, let's talk in. For years, for decades, we've been talking about deficits in terms of, tax collection processes, accountability also in the process, and, FIRS will declare this and that, and every year they keep on bringing people to the tax net. But let's, in terms of concept, in terms of understanding, where we are at the moment, I would like Prof to give us a background, to where we were and where we are now. And the gaps we still, or the miles we still need to, take in before we reach El Dorado.
Well, the one thing that is very clear is that Nigeria is undertaxed in the sense that our tax to GDP ratio is around 8%. But there's a big promise by the administration that they're going to nearly double that to 15%. But it's been persistently between that 6 to 8%, depending on the time of the year. And when you compare that to peer economies, you see that the average in Africa is about 18%. That's the average. And there are many tax areas that are also playing low. I mean, if you look at VAT, we are 7.5% on VAT. Most other countries are 15% on their VAT, and even likely to go higher. And then also, a small community is actually what is paying the tax, especially civil servants. But a lot of, as mentioned in the report, we have a very large informal sector that could be as much as 60%. And there's you have challenges in getting tax collection from that particular group. And sometimes you have to understand that they don't know what they don't know what they're paying it for. They can't see what they're paying it for. They have all kind of arguments to support why that. But we could improve when we bring technology into this. As you know, technology made a difference in the internal generation of Lagos State, and many other states began to copy that. It has robust features that can hold you to account and can compare people of the same business and grade. So they are very, very sophisticated technology assets that can help us with revenue collection. But apart from that whole idea of widening the tax net as a strategy, rather than intensifying the tax on the small constituency that you have, then I'm persuaded that that is the way to go. But there's also when you look at collecting tax, also look at reducing the hemorrhage you have in terms of tax waivers. We have learned that the tax waivers could even be as much as the tax that we are actually collecting. And those waivers are quite a few. And some of them are to do with customs revenue, some of them are too. So we are beginning to review those tax waivers to see how we can improve. And of course, there are also leakages in the system. Those leakages, as you plug them, you get more revenue. And I like the second part of the presentation that says, if you do more progressive tax system, it encourages productivity and encourages growth and supports growth and economic development. So again, it correlates with the various climes where they are using tax to incentivize production. And there's another part of it too that we also need to bear in mind, that tax collection, maybe I just leave that and we'll come back to it.
But I needed to, because you have spoken to some matters that Matan would speak to immediately in terms of the informal sector. Before we interrogate the skepticism from that sector, especially where is it going, what this money you're taking from us and all that, let's start from even what we've been collecting. The way it's been done. How, first of all, transparent is it? And then how do you even begin to interrogate the process when not much is done in terms of publishing or having an idea of where and what is happening, as we have seen in some other clients. Even to get these figures out, sometimes it's you are trying to squeeze stone. Sometimes in the past, of course, FIRS has been robust in engaging people for some time now, but in the past, when it was very low, what were the challenges? Is it because it wasn't particularly, computerized, or we didn't do a lot in terms of technology input into that process? Why
you pointed at it already. Technology was a very good one, because you had so many agents collecting tax, and you cannot guarantee. The government gets a very significant proportion of what is collected, because they end up in people's pockets. But the more the technology was getting implemented, people were being told to stay away from unknown tax collector. I remember one governor, was it Soludo or something, that just came in and said, if you see any tax man coming to collect money. So in other words, they are beginning to show. And then the tax collection systems being deployed earlier by Lagos State was just the pathfinder, in the sense that the people just come and make their own voluntary payment, what they call voluntary self-assessment. And that's what we were doing in UK for many years. Assess yourself and then pay what it is you think is what you should pay. You do that. That's voluntary self-assessment. Then after about 2-3 years, a tax assessor will come and sit with you to go through your thing. Books, yeah. And then when they actually start going through it with you, you begin to realize, you're actually underpaying tax, because it will now compare the business you do, your turnover, and another person that is doing exactly the same turnover just next door to you, or maybe somewhere, that is paying 3 or 4 times what you are paying. By the time they show this comparison, they will own up to the fact that they have been underpaying, and then they will correct it, and then you get an improvement. But you have sucked them into the tax net because you've allowed them to voluntarily enter. So that's one. Then the second one is that there was a survey that was carried out that showed that 68% of companies were providing power for themselves 90% of the time. Now, you have to tell me, how they will feel when the infrastructure that they think that they would have been paying for, they can get it. And, so how difficult it is for them to run business. And it's not just power. You have water, you have road, you have all of that. And then we have done some progressive tax by saying to key manufacturers, use up to 50% of your tax rebate to do the infrastructure. Like you see, Dangote them and all that, investing in doing roads around it. So that's very progressive, because you're actually encouraging them to pay tax, but also to use that to sort out the infrastructure that is going to enable them to expand their business. That's where it becomes very progressive and supportive of economic development. So we have so many of those over time, but not much has been done on blocking the leakages.
All right, let's me quickly, before I come to Matan, so that Matan will, perhaps, react after we've gotten, the intervention of those who actually understand these policies and are driving it. Matthew Bojungbola is the Director of Coordination and Compliance, Federal Inland Revenue Service. We're making progress, but tell us, in terms of what has been happening in the past few years in terms of your interface with Nigerians, companies and individuals, getting them into the tax net. What has been the problem, been issue before we've gotten to where we are now in terms of revenue collection?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question, and thanks viewers for having me. Where were we before? Now, I think Professor Ken had done a very good panorama of where we were, which was low tax compliance as a result of very low tax morale in the country for various reasons, some of which includes the use of tax revenue for social purposes and providing public goods, the issue of lack of taxpayer education. There was the issue of the adversarial approach to tax administration in the past. So that's what we had. And then largely tax administration was done based on manual approach, which can be very cumbersome, prone to error, whether intended or unintended. And then the tax laws that we still use, many of them are more than 60 years old. For example, the personal income tax law and the company's income tax law that we have today were more or less copies of the Income Tax Management Act of 1961. Our petroleum profit tax law, before we had the PIA, was a 1957 law. So this were where we were. Now, what have we been doing in current years to move away from that? One is the passing of the Yearly Finance Act to gradually bring the tax laws up to date. We have had 3 in the series, and then the 4th is in the making. The Federal Revenue Service had largely moved out of manual processing, and just like Professor Ken said, we also see some states' internal revenue services already coming up with technology to administer taxes. Another thing we see happening now in the tax space is constant engagement with the taxpayers and with the public. Now, making tax law is done in a collaborative way. We have the taxpayers, we have the tax practitioners, we have academia, tax administrators, policymakers, everybody sitting down around the table, which was not the case in the past. And then from the Federal Revenue Service point, you can see, just like your report said, last year we collected over 10 trillion naira for the country. For the half year, we have surpassed 5.5 trillion naira. We are set to exceed the collection for last year. All of these are coming as a result of, number one, we have had to restructure and reorganize our administration. Number two, we have had to establish a customer-friendly service. We have taxpayer service, we have call centers to continue to engage with our tax-paying public. We publish now every year a report of our activities. The report for 2022 was published a couple of months ago, detailing all that the FRS did in the last year. In addition to that, the introduction of technology, which had been one of the prime focus of this administration, had led to FRS using in-house capacities to develop softwares that are driving our business, unlike before when we have to go and buy off-the-shelf softwares from Europe, from America, and which are largely unsuitable for our environment. So these are some of the things that are happening in the recent past. And 2 years ago, the service started to publish the amount of tax revenue that we lose as a result of tax incentives, just like Professor Ken mentioned, which is one of our major problems. In year 2022 alone, FRS administered taxes, we had 1.8 trillion as tax revenue forgone. So, and these are things we are now doing, which is opening everybody's eyes to what we need to do to move the needle of our tax to GDP from what we have, which is about 10%, to the African average of about 18%. So I think in a nutshell, this is where we are, where we are coming from, what we have done, and we can see the result that we are certainly moving forward.
Let me stay with you briefly. You know, President Tinubu has rolled out some relief measures for taxpayers. This perhaps has never happened, at least in my memory, and it is coming as his presidency says is determined to expand the tax net, which is under your purview, to increase some generation from eligible companies and individuals. What exactly is the rationale behind this austerity strategy?
I won't say it's austerity strategy. What the government certainly is doing is the right thing to do. You will see that in the past, successive governments had not paid adequate attention to tax issues. And that was because we had crude petroleum and the prices were good, and so we thought that we had more than enough revenue. But unfortunately for us, that is not true. That is not true because we can see where that has taken us hitherto. Now, most developed economies actually develop based on the tax revenue they generate. And so what the government is doing is to now say, look, let's come back to the basics. Let's look at where we got it wrong and which is not paying attention to tax issues. And which is not just about collecting the revenue, it includes how do we manage the revenue that is collected? How do we spend it? Are we investing it, or are we just spending them on consumables? And so I think that is what the current government is saying, to say, look, let's take an holistic look at ourselves. Let's look at our policies, let's look at our laws, let's look at the administration, let's also look at how do we use the money in the first instance. How do we expand the net, bring every taxable person into the tax net, so that we can have a big bag and everybody can have a bite of the cake. I think this is my understanding of the government's approach to taxation and revenue issue, and this is what has informed some of the actions that has been taken. Number one, we want the tax system to be friendly, and that is why the president has to suspend some of the laws that were to take more or less a retroactive effect to make it friendly. Number two is to sit back and look at things that we need to change and what approach we need to adopt. So I think, in my view, what we see happening is actually the right way which we should go, and I do hope that we can make a success of it.
All right, let me quickly go to Sokoto. Thank you so much, Mr. Matthew Abujumbola, for your first foray and interventions. We are coming back to you because you are the main stakeholder. Let's go to Madam Shaibu Idris from Sokoto. In your experience, and as the first two speakers have, succinctly put them, it seems as if there's been a gap between those who, should be paying the taxes and those who are collecting the taxes. A value of skepticism and, perhaps even looking at what exactly are they doing this for. So what has been, in your experience, or, what has been the challenge before eventually we have gotten to what he has called the soft glove, a friendlier approach?
Good evening, fellow discussant. Good evening, and of course, good evening to viewers. Thank you for having me. The last two discussants, particularly our elder Professor Ken Ife and indeed Matthew, have done a bit of justice, to the conversation. However, Fisayo, and I would like us to, take a step back and look at who is Nigeria, or what is Nigeria, and juxtapose the tax regimes that we have had prior to independence, post-independence, prior to the discovery of oil in Nigeria, the crude oil, and post the era of discovery of crude oil in Nigeria. Matthew has succinctly put it that other climates do develop and indeed have developed based on taxation. Nigeria, prior to independence, post-independence, we had a robust tax regime, a robust tax administration, and a robust collection and accounting of taxation. I come from the northern part of Nigeria. My first place of work when I left university was taxation. I was an inspector of tax, and I do remember that there were no markets, whether the markets are selling goats, cows, cotton, grains, that we did not have a bit of tax collection that was being accounted for. Fast forward during the era of the second, democratic movement, when we had the MPN and the PRP government. Kaduna State then and Kano State had PRP, and they abolished the Jangali tax, they abolished the Meangua tax, entered that regime. From that time, Nigerians began to withdraw from voluntarily paying taxation. Then enter the era of post-oil. We got oil, and government, indeed, with all sense of modesty, one of the leaders of this country did say that money wasn't our problem, but how to spend it. And therefore, we all jettison, the mechanism of tax collection. And because there is oil, because there is money in oil, we are not collecting. Matthew, Prof, and the other discussants will all agree that we have the personal income tax law, we have the petroleum profit tax law, we have the company income tax law, we have the capital transfer tax law, we have the capital gains tax laws. Can Matthew help us to state how much of this subset we are collecting taxes from? This issue of Last year we collected 10 trillion. Half year we collected 5.5 trillion. This year, therefore, we have done well. When you interrogate those figures on the strength of how many people were taxed, Fisayo, as at the last time I checked our records, the federal inland revenue has less than 1 million companies that they are taxing. In a country that we have over 10 million registered companies, we have only about 1,750,000 that we have that have been taxed. Can we say we are doing well? I think when we want to report figures, we should be the typical accountants that we are, the typical economics that we are, to interrogate and analyze the figures and say, this is what I have, 5.5, how did I come about this 5.5? Should I have done better than that? Did I collect VAT? Did I collect personal income tax, company income tax, petroleum profit tax, capital transfer tax, and other taxation that we should have collected? What happened? I think we need to look at value for money and time value for money. If last year federal revenue or even the customs that used to talk about, oh, we have collected so much, when and where devaluation has taken place and importers are bringing in goods in dollars and the naira equivalent of the imports has increased and you're collecting more money. If I don't use a baseline figure and then apply a sensitivity analysis to make sure that are you really making progress, or in essence you are even making you are retrogressing, we will just be beating our trumpet, and like we used to say in Hausa, you will be bathing yourself with dirty water and be thinking that you are washing yourself. I think we need to be careful, and we need to look at what exactly do we need to do so that we will have a country where the tax to GDP should be somewhere around 25 and not the African average of 18. I believe the current mechanism and the current staff that we have in Federal Inland Revenue Service, and indeed in quite a number of the State Board of Internal Revenues, have the capacity to collect these revenues and account for them to make sure that we have minimum 25% of debt, GDP to tax revenue. Of course, the 1.8 trillion that we've lost arising from waivers, gentlemen, you will agree with me, quite a number of those waivers were politically motivated. We are on a national television, there are certain things that need not to be said, but there were quite a number of waivers that were given by past administration that leaves much to be desired. When you interrogate them, you will realize that they were not waivers meant to enhance the productive sector of the economy. They were just waivers meant for political peerages or patronage. Let me stop here.
Don't worry, we will come back to you because you have, given a statement of the problem. Of course, you have given, some, ideas that we need to perhaps adopt going forward. Of course, I'll also allow, our man from the FIRS to respond. But let's quickly take a story from your zone. Matam has been waiting for a while, but we will come back to him. But let's take a story from your zone, from Kano, and then we'll come back.
Nigeria has a long history of taxation as one of the sources of revenue for the country, with different taxes imposed on the income and profit of individuals and businesses at different levels, which aid in generating revenue and pursuing better economic possibilities for the country. Kano State, with an estimated population of nearly 20 million people and a major commercial hub of the northern region, has a system of tax collection created to generate income for the state through mostly indirect taxation on goods and services which citizens purchase. But this system of revenue collection, often carried out by the state, local, and sometimes the federal government, is not without its loopholes.
There are so many problems because there is no awareness between the revenue collectors and the marketers, people here. They don't know which one and which one that they are paying. So maybe when you say your revenue in January, maybe between April, May, someone come again to say that we need also revenue. And if you don't know, maybe some of them, they don't know what containing in the papers that they are presenting to them. So that's why people are complaining, because they don't know the actual revenue that they are paying.
You know, when it comes to income tax and stuff like that, there's clarity. But it's all these other small charges that tend to pop up. You know, be it property tax, be it ground rent, land use, tenement rate, so many names that you give so many things.
How then can the government remedy these challenges?
Addressing tax evasion, adopting international standards is very, very important. That ensures the exchange of tax information, increasing the loopholes that allow for unfair tax practices. And they need to review and rationalize tax systems to ensure that effective contribution to the desired economic outcomes are achieved. Better communication between the tax administrators as well as the tax payers is important. The international best practice allow for the providing of guidance to taxpayers to know how much you are paying, what are your concerns, as well as create a kind of a friendly environment that allows for interaction between the authorities as well as the taxpayers.
Experts believe that with a defined structure of taxation in place, Nigeria can live on an established tax system that will help pool funds, as is obtainable in most countries around the world. In Kano, Elizabeth Yila.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And that leads me straight to Donald Ibiowu, National Legal Advisor, Market Traders Association of Nigeria matter. Some of your members have spoken even in Kano. Yeah. Some don't even know what it is about. And that is the challenge you are having, perhaps in educating them that there's a need for this. Just like Prof has said, the target now is your sector, the informal sector, which is even much larger than the community that has been paying the taxes for some time and sustaining, our economy, to a reasonable point. So tell us where you are at the moment in terms of that interface with traders and letting them understand that this is the way to go.
Thank you very much, and thank you, viewers, for this privilege. You see, for us at the Market Traders Association of Nigeria, we bear the brunt of multiple taxation and tax extortion. All of what the Prof highlighted are things that over the years we have been at the very, very cross of it. So, of course, like you know, the Market Traders Association is the umbrella body of all of the unit associations within the informal sector. We're talking about the artisans, the keke drivers, and all of the mushroom associations have put together to come under this umbrella called the Market Traders Association to address some of these salient issues within the market space. And the issues are multiple taxation and extortion, and you find out like...
Can you give us an example of what to call extortion?
Okay, so you find in an average market, a trader will have to pay for like 3, 4, 5, 6, even up to 7 receipts in a day for somebody who is barely selling maybe water. So this is our experience, at the Market Traders Association, and this is what has necessitated our advocacy all over the years to see that the government finds the need to address our own angle, our own end of the stick. And it's important to make the point that, of course, all of this has now begin to receive the desired attention. Of course, for some time now, we have been working with some institutions, of government, like the FRS that you mentioned, the JTB, to see how we can ameliorate this particular challenge that we have. And of course, the informal sector is the largest sector on tax. At the moment, we're talking about up to 70% of the tax net that is on tap. So the government is seriously looking in this direction, and steps have been taken to address some of these challenges. And of course, on our part, of course, over the years, like I said, we have been, of course, as an informal sector body, we have been trying to put ourselves together. We have launched a concept called the Integrated Market Traders Revenue Management System. That has been on, and what we mean by that is that we want to put a stop to multiple taxation, and that is what leads to the hike that you see. For instance, if you buy a bottle of water or a bag of water from Kano, you are taken to go and sell in Lagos, for instance, or in Bayelsa. So you find that at every stop of the road, you have to pay taxes. You have to counter people, like you mentioned in your intro, people who are not, monies are not going to the government coffers. So all of these are what to, at the end of the day, leads to the price hike or the inflation that we are even seeing. So on our part, we have taken concrete steps to engage the government. We have engaged the FRS, and as we speak, we all of our cries over the years has received, some form of government intervention, and that led us to the launching of what is called the VAT Direct Initiative, with the FRS sometime last.
What does that entail? Okay,
so what it entails is that because on our own part at Matan, we the best way we think, the tax extortion and multiplicity can be stopped is for us to use technology, like the Prof or one of the rightly mentioned. So we have deployed technology. We have, a technical platform that enables us to get collections from our members, in the market space, and this helps us to track and know who gets what per time. So the government, like I said, through the VAT Direct, they are taking interest in this, and we are working together to ensure that we are going to be able to streamline the multiple taxation in the informal sector, and government on the other hand is going to be able to get more revenue into the tax net, because the challenge is not about increasing taxation. It's about how to widen the tax net to bring this informal sector into the tax net, and if you recall the speech of Mr. President on the day of his inauguration, right there at the Eagle Square, he made mention of abolition of multiple taxation. Those were part of his, and true to his word, he has taken steps to set up the committee, the Fiscal Revenue Committee, of government, that is now working, to ensure that some of these things are properly put into context, and what the negative experience of the informal sector, that Matan has come to now streamline and ensure that we have a robust tax revenue to government system, is properly streamlined and in doing this, of course, the informal sector is not being taxed. So to do that, there are some incentives that we have rolled out to ensure that our members, those who have not been paying tax or those who have been paying wrongly, are encouraged to pay. We are encouraged to pay rather. So we are looking at voluntary compliance on the part, of our members, the informal sector. So to that extent, we have rolled out several incentives. So we are looking at health insurance cover for them. But as you pay your tax, you are properly documented, you are going to have to enjoy, that benefit. We are looking at some MSME loans, that will be available to them. Of course, we are aggregating several partners, several institutions to deliver this. We are looking at, insurance for their wares, for their goods, and all of that. So we are looking at a lot of other infrastructure within the market space. For instance, in the market, what the taxpayer needs to see that, my tax is being utilized. So therefore, so if they see these incentives that we are deploying, for instance, within the markets where a toilet is built, a clinic is built, so some of these things will encourage, the informal sector players to come into the tax net. So this, some of these incentives are being deployed to ensure that the informal sector is encouraged to pay tax, as we speak.
All right, Pop, I want you to come in briefly, because if we look at it from the simplistic, perspective, you just tell people about tax, especially taxes about, people who earn a living eke out a living on, daily basis and all that. They simply push the tax to the consumer and add more. How do we, go around this, what would look like another circle, when we see prices continue to soar, because it never comes down in Nigeria, at least in my experience? How do we, negotiate this milieu?
I don't think we are talking about price control, because we have a market economy, a free market economy, where we expect the market to determine the prices. Of course, that's not working out for many other areas, but I don't see that a major cause for price increases is just because of tax.
No, I
don't see.
I'm saying where it's going, in case of, I'm just talking from the simplistic perspective. For instance, you don't have much education about what is happening, and then they say, okay, pay a certain thing. What normally will happen is that the person will simply say, this is what I want to gain, and add a little for the consumers to take off.
But it's only natural. You do cost plus. So whatever is your cost, tax is part of your cost. Then you have to make a living. So you have to put a margin on top of it. It's only natural. You can't say because you pay tax, then you reduce it. But there's something I want to raise. We focus on the informal sector. We've also focused on some other private sector. But let us look at government-owned companies that are not paying their tax. And Fiscal Responsibility Act has been chasing that segment. And we have Section 22 of the Fiscal Responsibility Act that was dealing with operating surplus. So according to that, those revenue earning government agencies are supposed to retire 80% of their operating surplus. And the Finance Act 2020, in frustration, just changed it and said, look, 50% cost to revenue. So bring they won't go for your 50% of your revenue, and then you can now do a return on the remaining 50%, and then we'll see who claws back what. It all tells you that we still have even the government sector not even complying. And then you even went to a point of Schedule 2 had 122 companies in it. And I remember the House of Assembly said, no, everybody should be subjected to the same process. So, bring your account and let's see whether it's no longer, please don't put us on that list. No, they said we want to go for everybody. So there are, when you are pointing one finger on somebody, two other fingers are pointing at you. We need to recognize that there's a challenge there too.
All right, let me quickly go back to, Director Coordination, FRS. You've listened to some of the, comments made, especially from Matan, and they said they have been interfacing with you as well. Have you brought some of these things on board? And this is one of the challenges, multiple taxation, even at that level, for the small businesses. It could be, the death of some of these businesses if not properly, looked into. What is your, comment? What are your comments at this time, especially talking about what Mr. Donald said earlier before Prof's intervention?
Yeah, thanks very much for that. And thank you very much, Madam Idris. I think your comments are very, very good comments, and the questions are very pregnant. Just if you permit, just a few corrections. I think it's a very good one to want to say, look, you have all these taxes, companies income tax, personal income tax, capital gains tax, and what are you collecting from each of them? I will humbly request that you can download the FRS report for 2022. You will see a very detailed breakdown of the income, the revenue derived from each tax type. However, capital transfer tax had been abolished, and I think about 30 years ago, so we no longer have that in our tax laws. That's just a slight errata that I wanted to do there. Now, it is true that we have millions of companies registered by the CAC. But the truth that is known by everybody is that not all those companies are in business. There are many, many companies that are incorporated and the certificate of incorporation are put under pillows, doing nothing. And we all know that companies' income tax is based on the profits that a company has made in the course of its business operations. And so if we have less than 1 million registered taxpayers in FRS database, that signifies those who are in active business and who we can locate their business premises. Howbeit, it doesn't take anything away from what you have said. There are probably many more out there who are doing businesses in their bedrooms, the bedrooms of their directors, and without signposts, and then we can't trace them. But one thing that the service is doing now is working with financial institutions to be able to begin to get data of financial transactions of every company. And this, in the few years that we have started, has yielded very positive results, and we will continue along that trajectory. Now, as regards multiple taxation, as mentioned by Mr. Ibio, this is a major challenge for the country. And just like he said, the president in his inaugural speech mentioned that this will not be allowed, and it should not be allowed. And the Federal Revenue Service had consistently spoken that multiplicity of taxes is not good for our economy and therefore should not persist. Howbeit, we need to understand how come we have these multiple taxes around us. I think the first thing the major factor is because we practice a federal system. We have the federal government, we have the state government, we have the local government, and each of them is independent, as it were, to do some levies, to impose taxes. And so this is actually the genesis of multiplicity of taxes. However, it is important that all of us, and when I say all of us, whether individuals, corporate bodies, government corporations, everybody, we need to agree that the economy of this country is very important and bigger than any single tier of government. And therefore, we must be able to see how we streamline all these numerous taxes and then be able to promote business enterprises and ventures in Nigeria. Now, one major issue again that we see is that there is also the issue of proper understanding. There are certain payments that we make to governments that are not taxes. For example, if I pay to obtain an international passport, that is not a tax. That is a payment for a specific service. But because of lack of education, most often when people are paying for services, they deem those payments to be part of taxes, which is not correct. Another thing we also, which is also very important that we look at in combating a multiplicity of taxes is the use of non-government agencies to collect taxes. And this is very common in the subnationals, where you find non-government actors acting and collecting revenue in the name of government. Now, whether the money, the revenue collected now goes to the covers of government or not is another question on its own. So these are actually a whole lot of issues that are impacting on the issue of multiplicity of taxes, and it's affecting the ease of doing business in Nigeria. It's discouraging investment. Now, question is, what do we do? And I think the committee set up by the president is a very good way to look at this issue holistically and be able to now engage with all subnationals, including the federal government. And let's all agree the number of taxes that we'll be collecting in this country and who collects what. And then we are able to put this in the law, and then hopefully everybody will obey the law. So this is the way I see it that we can go. That is, all of us coming together, agreeing that we need to build this economy, we need to grow this economy, we need to attract foreign direct investment, we need to promote domestic investment, and we should not be taxing capital, we should not be taxing people who are bringing money to invest. Instead, we should be taxing the profits that people have made from their operations. But then it's important that government also needs money to fund these operations. So again, issues of voluntary tax compliance becomes very key. Issue of advocacy again becomes very important because sometimes the non-governmental organizations, the civil societies, they need to join in the advocacy to promote that a voluntary tax compliance, that people should on their own comply with the law of the land. So these are some of my responses to the issues that have been raised by Malam Idris and by Mr. Ajibiogu.
All right, let's go to Malam Idris in Sokoto. Are you satisfied with the interventions that Mr. Matthew has brought forward, and what will be your comments to some of the comments he's just made in reaction to some of the questions you put forward earlier in the program?
I think the issue is not directed to Matthew per se, but I thank him very much for the correction regarding the capital transfer tax. I do remember that it's been abolished, so we still have capital gains tax. But whether my position still remains fundamentally, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has consistently remained resolute to see, I am not going to increase the tax rate. What I am going to do in order to enhance tax collection is, number one, to broaden the tax bracket. Number two, to enhance the efficiency of the tax collection. Now, if FIRS only looks at the financial institution to get transaction, I will want to believe that in order to help Mr. President actualize his dreams, there is need for FIRS to also extend its hand of fellowship to CAC, so that even on the strength of registration, or at the point of registration, we should be able to capture the names of these companies. I do sincerely believe, Matthew, you will agree with me, we as Nigerians, you've already alluded to the fact that some of us have companies, we operate the companies in our bedrooms as directors, so we don't like to pay tax. I think all I'm trying to say is there are rooms, not just one room. There are multiplicity of rooms for improvement in terms of widening the tax bracket. And I'm also of the opinion that whenever the Federal Inland Revenue or any of the government agencies that is collecting revenue is talking about how much money I have been able to collect vis-a-vis last year, we should factor these fundamental variables: inflation, exchange rate. If the rate of inflation is 24%, If you have increased your revenue, from last year, you collected, for example, 4.9 trillion half year. This year you have collected 5.5 trillion. Is that an improvement? When you factor, inflation and exchange rate. All I'm trying to say is we are in it together. This conversation isn't a question of challenging FIRS, but giving a contribution as to how best, the regime of Bola Ahmed Tinubu will be able to take us to El Dorado, even if not El Dorado, but closer to El Dorado, so that by the time, we reach the third year of the administration, like I said, we should be hovering around 25, not even 18% tax to GDP. I still believe there is, the need for the federal inland revenue, as we've always been doing under the JTB, the Joint Tax Board, to interface with the Board of Internal Revenues of each state. You probably need to find a way to see how best to help them. I do know that we are operating a federal constitution with all its nuances of this. The subnational are independent of the national, but we are in Nigeria, we are in it together, and poverty level in Zamfara state or Borno state, and the lower poverty level in Lagos state, when you juxtapose and you melt everything, what happens? Nigeria is being claimed to be the capital city or the capital of poverty of the world, largely because some other subnationals are not operating optimally as others. So there has to be a way to look at this tax regime within the context of how best to enhance the revenue collection, the efficiency, and what have you. My comments were not a criticism per se, but rather a critique with a view to improving the system and then giving our own, one penny suggestion to the tax committee of Taiwo and the wise men and women in that committee.
With your comments, we will go on a very short break. When we return, the task before us is unraveling what has been, tasking in our tax laws.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thank you for watching Tuesday Live on the network service of Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's finest and largest. And we still have Professor Ken Ife, development economist, with us. Donald Ibu, National Legal Advisor, Market Traders Association of Nigeria, MATAM. Matthew Bujumbola, Director Coordination and Compliance, Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, and Malam Shuaibu Idris, who's an expert in the field and Managing Director, Timeline Consult from Sokoto. gentlemen, we move to, other aspects of it. But let's quickly take a report from Jos and get perspectives from the Plateau.
It's evolved over time, metamorphosing from the traditional to the modern, in which there's proper documentation of how much is collected, from which source, and how it is utilized. Infractions in tax management have necessitated successive administrations to tinker with some aspects of tax policies aimed at improving the sector. Plateau State is not left out in this quest to boost its revenue through tax, and has, upon assumption of the new administration, put some measures in place to up the game.
His Excellency Barrister Caleb Mutfwang has keyed into the new reforms by President Bola Tinubu. He did mention that his administration is determined to go into all those sectors that are hitherto untapped, especially the informal sector, by creating awareness, creating a database, and making ease of payment to enable the taxpayers to be able to pay taxes seamlessly.
Plateau has been inadvertently tagged a civil service state, where the chunk of its revenue is derived from pay as you earn, payee. But the authorities say the narrative is changing.
He identified certain sectors which forms the template that we're working with now, like the mining sector and the mining value chain, agricultural sector, agricultural value chain, and tourism and many others.
The formal sector has leakages, the informal sector are untapped. So now, how can we get them into the tax net? Now, if you remember, the debates have changed. We want to start using what we call the NIM as a TIN number. That's the tax identification number. Don't forget also the NIM is tied to your phone number. The NIM is tied to your BVN. So now, in that doing, we are going to harvest data for those in the private sector. So now we have their income, we have their details. So all we sit down in the comfort of our office, and we're going to leverage first on technology.
Those that have come under some backlash or genuine concerns are the business owners who have either complained of multiple taxation or accused of evading tax.
I see what this present government is trying to do. Let's do a proper evaluation first. Are people really being overtaxed or double taxed? Now, after that assessment is being done, are people really paying what they should pay? Because the truth is there are a lot of productive activities going on in this sector that they are not paying taxes.
We also want the government to, in return, do what the whole citizen will be happy about. And I think by so doing, everybody will be happy to pay.
Tourism and hospitality sectors are believed to be the major sources through which Plateau State can leverage on to improve its internally generated revenue. In Jos, Caleb Gochin.
Thank you, Caleb. I think it's time that we get Nigerians talking as well on the tax reform, where we are, what we need to do, your experiences as well, and how to move forward. Matthew Bojumbola, I beg your pardon, Director of Coordination and Compliance, Federal Inland Revenue Service. You've heard from some of the states. Are you encouraged by what some of the state governments are trying to do as well in trying to expand the tax net?
Thank you very much, Professor. I know you are struggling to pronounce my name. The name is Bonjubola. It's actually very easy to pronounce. Now, as to what state governments are doing, I think there is a ray of light in the dark tunnel for us, because before now, it had been mostly very few states, and of course the Federal Inland Revenue Service that had been investing in development of tax administration. But gladly, most other states are joining, which is very good. Because when you look at the tax to GDP ratio of Nigeria, which we say is between just about 10%, whereas the average in Africa is about 18%. When you actually look at it, the computation, you find out that the contribution from the federal agencies, FRS, customs, have been the major driver of the tax to GDP ratio. And so, but then what happens to personal income tax? In all the other countries of Africa, you actually see that the personal income tax, which the states are managing in Nigeria, happens to be the bigger contribution in the total tax bucket. If you take South Africa, for example, while in 2021, all the personal income tax collected by all the 36 states plus plus FCT was less than $3 billion. South Africa alone collected well close to 30 billion US dollars equivalent. And then the population in South Africa is just about 60.4.5 million people in 2021, whereas Nigeria's population as at that time was close to 200 million. So question is why? What happened? The reason is because most of our states have not been effectively harnessing the resources from personal income tax. And under our laws, it is the state that are responsible for administering personal income tax. And so this is one of the major challenges we have seen, and that which was why the FRS has been talking about harmonization of the tax system. Because when we have 38 different tax authorities in the country, it creates room for tax dodgers to hide. And if, for example, you take an example, I am from Osun State. I live and work in FCT. If I have income other than my employment income, that income can escape tax, because I will simply tell them in Osun State that, look, I'm resident in Abuja, so my tax is paid there. And then when
we lost contact there, but I hope hopefully Mr. Bonyibola will be back. But we have Saminu from Abuja to make his. I understand we also lost that call, but we'll please try again, Saminu. We understand you want to make one comment concerning some of the stories we've brought online today, so that you can equally be part of the program. But Prof, you were enjoying some of the, reports and all that. What are your comments at this time? The gap is much. We're talking of 10% in terms of how we're doing 18% on the average on the continent with a huge population. That's poor.
But remember that we have the lowest VAT tax rate of 7.5%. So it's double for most other states, other countries. But I hear what he said about personal income tax. Over the last 15, 20 years, the governments are not employing anybody. They tell you that there's employment embargo, isn't it? That they have embargo. So you have an aging workforce. At the same time, only 7% of graduates get employment. So where are the workforce that you're going to give you the personal income tax?
Please, I would like you to hold that thought, because someone has been on the line for a while. Adoyi from Kogi, please, if you're still there, please quickly, let's hear you. Adoyi from Kogi, you're on. Adoyi, you're on now, you can go ahead. All right, if maybe we're having a few challenges with the lines, but please keep on trying so that we can get your interventions. Prof, please, you can continue with that train of thought.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, in effect, is that we are not creating employment. So if you're not creating employment, where do you expect that personal income tax to come from? We just have a small population of workforce that are there, and we are not replenishing that workforce. And you can't expect too much. Unemployment rate is 33.3%, which would be about 40% now. But under 35 years old, which are where our young people that should be paying that tax are, That's 75% of our population. And their unemployment rate is 48%. Their underemployment, 22%. So there are 70% of them can't get any job. So I don't know where you're going to get the money you are looking for in terms of personal income tax. So we have to do more for entrepreneurship, to get people to employ themselves, and then to well, I think Bola is the president is actually addressing that. If he's targeting 70 companies to get 1 billion, he's hitting it. So let's hope that we will create more opportunity for these children, because it's just gone to a boiling point now that, I don't think many can have it anymore.
All right, Muslim from Abuja is on. Muslim, if you can hear me, let's hear you also from Abuja.
Okay, I just want to make comment about the collaboration of FRS with the Corporate Affairs Commission.
Go ahead.
As companies are being incorporated,
can you move a little bit away from your TV set so that we'll hear you? There's a hall back.
Okay, hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
I said I am aware FRS had collaboration with Corporate Affairs Commission, and that is done by automatic generation of claim. And regarding inactivities of companies that is being referred to, that FRS is not being annexed, I'm aware recently there is publication of about 100,000 companies that are inactive in Corporate Affairs Commission's record. So these are part of the reason why we cannot say all the companies should contribute to the revenue being generated by Federal Revenue Service.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Muslim, for your contribution. I think that point also was made by the Director of Coordination from FIRS and also Madam Shuaibu. Coming to you, in your interaction with your members, Matthew Bonjibola was talking about morale, tax morale. Are they encouraged to want to be a part of it, or are we still having that ambivalence, or even to some level cynicism in terms of this collection?
Okay, so what I can assure you is that with the steps being taken right now by the FRS and MATAN, making substantial inroad into the informal sector, using the MATAN platform, as the biggest cluster within the informal sector to drive collection. The members, the informal sector, they are well encouraged because of the incentives that is being deployed. Right? Either to, they've not been paid taxes, or taxes have been mismanaged, and they don't even see the effect of some of these things. But now that government is coming with a new template that enables them to pay via technology, that enables them to get substantial benefits in terms of the incentives that are embedded in the initiative that government is deploying, definitely the informal sector, there is that renewed enthusiasm to see that. And of course, the president is somebody that everybody believes, will do right. And with this initiative that is spearheading, via the FRS. Of course, I want to commend the chairman of FRS, because I'm aware that there's a lot of harmonization that is being done at the moment. And there's a lot that is being done in terms of bringing everybody, into the tax net. So to that extent, the FRS is doing so much, at the moment, particularly as regards the informal sector. And I believe that if this current momentum is sustained, and there is clarity, there's transparency via the technology that is being deployed and the incentives that is being given is also sustained, I believe the moral issue or the moral question will be dealt with sufficiently.
I must pause at this time because of the name of the person who wants to make some interventions. Arise and shine from Abuja. We need you to really shine on the program today. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to go to what you are saying. If we really want to make this country to move forward, the best thing is for individuals to pay your tax to develop this country. Going to abroad, going to America, you see people, they are paying their tax every time. They don't even let anybody out. The best thing, if we can try and make sure that we pay our taxes, both the youth, the young and the old, you see that there are a lot of benefits that we are going to benefit from this country. The local government chairman will be able to work. The state government will be able to work. We lack many things in this country because we fail to pay our tax. If they can harmonize the taxes, it will be better for us. And Nigeria will be moving. Seriously, that is my contribution. Thank you.
All right, let me go to Mr. Bojumbola. From some of the interventions you've heard and things put in place, the administration has set a target of 18% tax to GDP ratio. Is that realistic or optimistic in terms of what we can achieve?
Thank you very much, Professor. It is both optimistic and realistic, and of course, you cannot realize if you are not optimistic. So for me, it is both. The question is, how do we get there? And like I mentioned in my initial comment, the action of the president in setting up this presidential committee is a very, very important step. Next thing that should follow is proper engagement with every stakeholder, taxpayers, tax practitioners, lawyers, National Assembly, everybody, subnationals. All of us must come to the table and design the tax system that will work for us. Then we must be willing to take bold actions and decisions. Some of our tax incentives regime, we need to let go of them. And it is very important. Then we need to properly, and particularly at the subnational, we must invest in tax administration. Many of our tax administration at the subnational level are still struggling. And so we need to properly invest in them. And then lastly, it's important that we remake our laws, make them clearer, make them up to date, because businesses have changed the way they used to do business. Now, a lot of businesses have moved online. So we must be able to have laws that is applicable to today's businesses. And of course, very importantly, we must begin to harmonize our tax laws. We must harmonize our tax administrations so that we don't have too many loopholes that enables tax evaders and avoiders to run into. So, back to your question, we must be optimistic, and having a tax to GDP ratio of 18% is realistic.
Okay, Patrick from Abuja, sorry for keeping you there, but please, we would please try to get us back again. I needed Mr. Bojumbola to finish with that. Malam Shuaibu is in Sokoto. You've heard from the panel here. What are your comments at this time? How do we go forward? Of course, FIRS says the target, 18% tax to GDP, is both realistic and optimistic. From your own perspective, how do we go there, and what are the low-hanging fruits? For instance, from your experiences, especially in your own location.
Let me, on a lighter note, challenge you that you couldn't pronounce Bojumbola very correctly. Me, a Hausa man living in Lagos, I just happen to be in Sokoto, and I'm going back to my Lagos base tomorrow. I align my thoughts to Matthew. Of course, 18% is achievable, is not just optimistic, is not just realistic, but it's achievable. My prayers is we should end up with somewhere around 25%, not even 18%. Matthew's comment, and indeed Professor Ken Ife's comment regarding the issue of how much money we are able to collect from personal income tax. I align my thought to that, to those of Professor Ken Ife. Matthew, we need to compare, apples with apples. What is our minimum wage in Nigeria today? 30,000 naira? How many states of the federation are even able to pay the 30,000 naira? What is 30,000 naira in dollar terms? Compare the minimum wage in South Africa with the minimum wage in Nigeria. Then give yourself a verdict. Why should we be collecting only about $3 billion, personal income tax compared to say 25 or 30 billion dollars, 60 million South Africans are able to pay, and meanwhile 200 million Nigerians are only able to pay $3 billion. That you will agree that there is a reason behind the huge disparity and the gaps. I think also, Matthew, the current chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service has been doing fairly well. The board have been doing fairly well. The Joint Tax Board has been doing fairly well. But I'm surprised that if we will be talking about there is need, to review the tax laws. Who is supposed to initiate a review of the tax laws of Nigeria? To the best of my knowledge, it should be Federal Inland Revenue Service and or the Joint Tax Board. And if you don't initiate that, your parent ministry, the Federal Ministry of Finance, you should engineer the Federal Ministry of Finance to do all this. I mean, there is no point, like Professor Ken Ife said, when you point one finger to someone, the rest of the fingers are pointing at you. So I think the earlier we, you guys get into the saddle, the better. And I think my final note at this juncture is, the issue.
A moment, we've had a caller before you even came on, and I understand that he wants to make a comment. I will just come back to you very shortly. Adoyi, please, from Kogi, you called earlier, you're back. Please make your comments, please.
Good evening, sir.
Go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Please move away from your TV set. If you move away from your TV set, you won't have that callback.
Okay, talking about getting a reform, tax reform, I want to ask a lot of youth are not getting something doing. Like, when we're talking about agriculture, let's look at the perspective from agriculture. A lot of youth are interested in agriculture, but the way the country is not even, giving the youth a chance to practice agriculture very well. So I'm asking, if the youth can be given a chance to practice agriculture, like giving them the opportunity to get agriculture in terms to make it very wide, I think you have, like, for instance, a youth that have a farm and is doing very well. So from there, you can play it. But when you look at out of 100, many youths are not doing anything, and they are not making in terms of, let's say, agricultural perspective, they are not making it very nice for them to, come into it. And people who are winning are not even getting the opportunity. So how can we generate this income? How can we pay our tax? That's the question I want to ask.
Thank you very much, Adoye. We heard you, and we heard you well. Professor Ken Ife touched on that earlier. Perhaps we'll revisit that as well before we close. But let me go back to Malam Shaibu. You were making a final comment on some of the things that tickled your fancy in terms of some of the stories we've been carrying. So just finish with that line of thought before I come back to Prof. In terms of the low-hanging fruits in all these reforms that we are seeing being rolled out.
There is need to go back to the drawing board as far as collecting surpluses from the government agencies that should have been rendering reports and returns to government. I can remember during President Obasanjo's tenure, there was a particular year that certain things needed to be put in place, and it was the then NITEL, the defunct NITEL, that was able to bail out the federal government with a contribution of close to about 10 billion naira to the federation account. I am sure the level of imprudence and extravagance that is taking place in quite a number of the agencies need to be capped so that the revenues can add to the contribution to the center. And I think also it will be in the interest of the national government to help some of these states to effectively, revolutionize and use technology to collect taxes. Because, these ratios that we bandy around, the debt to equity ratio, the GDP to revenue ratio, this, that, they paint us in bad light. And if we were to capture appropriately the taxes that we have been collecting, we will have had a slightly better, performance. And I think finally, I will once again crave the indulgence of the Federal Inland Revenue Service to extend its hands of fellowship to other government agencies, particularly with the intention of the current President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to make the Federal Inland Revenue as the center, the signature of tax collection. The President is saying custom duties will be collected by you, income taxes will be collected by you, NIMASA, MPA charges, all those charges will be collected by you. How ready, how functionally able are you to collect all these taxes? And we need to look at this carefully. I think finally, I think President should also have given the TIOS committee a specific tenure. How long should they work to give him a report so that he will implement? Remember, this administration is just 2-3 months old. Sooner or later we will begin to talk about second term, and politics will set in, and then the economy will take a backstage. Today the economy is at front stage. In the next 18 months, if care is not taken, we will go back to politics and we'll forget some of this. So we need a kind of shock therapy, a quick and easy kind of approach to make sure that we achieve the aims and objectives of these tax reforms.
And Shabu Umar from Benin Kirby just called in now. Umar, if you are still there, please can you join us now?
Yes, I'm still here. I'm Umar Anaje calling from Benin.
Go ahead, please.
You see, the man from Sokoto gave a very fantastic analysis based on the income and income of civil servants. Apart from civil servants, I don't think if any other person is paying tax properly in Nigeria, all those big men are taxed dodgers. They are not being taxed. And another thing is that corruption. The corruption. People are not believe that this tax is being utilized well. Look at former Accountant General of the Federation. He alone, he cater the money for the budget of half the budget of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So, seeing those things, the taxpayer did not believe that tax is being utilized. That is why it's not being.
Omar, we lost that call, but of course, I think he has made his point. Prof, we need you to, put this in. Perhaps we'll begin to look at what the reality on ground and what we'll be expecting to see in the next few months or perhaps in a year's time, since this committee will begin to work and some of these reforms will begin to see what is the results of some of these new reforms. Now, we've been asking, can we achieve that 18%? Or
no, I have no doubt at all that we will. But the thing is that we have to fully and totally deploy technology. I can never cease to admire Lagos State when they implemented their technology, because they had that issue of middlemen. So you can comfortably go into the system, put in your time, and then it gives you receipt. That is very important. People want to see their receipt, which is an output from the system. So if you want to plug holes, use technology. If you want to widen the tax net, use technology. If you want to decrease the leakages, use technology. Wherever you want to go, you use technology. Because the technology, although people can still beat it some respect, but it is a sure way. If you want to achieve inclusion, use technology. It is just technology, and our colleague from the FIRS has also hinted that we need to invest. It's investment. There's nothing you will want to do that you will not do the investment. If you want to fight corruption, you will use systems to fight corruption. You need to invest in those systems. If you want to, even anything you want to do, you still have to invest to make that change. And so I think, yes, investment is important. Investment in what? Investment in technology. If we are going to implement, I think they've already started, this self-assessment system, have it online. Anybody with their phone can key in online and give his thing, and then you get a return. So use the technology. It makes a big difference.
All right, Ishama from Otukpo was trying to get in, but we saw that call just beep. But I understand the Ishama is no longer there. But hopefully, if you can still get us, then of course we will take your intervention. Let's take a report from Oka. If the report is ready, we understand that it's not on standby. Would continue since we are getting to the home run. Well, there's Fred online now. Fred, please go ahead. Fred, go ahead.
Hello.
Fred, go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay. My question will go directly to. Yeah, the question is coming to Matthew and Donald, the Matan person, and the IRS representative, the Matthew. Yes, we've heard so much about the partnership with FIRS, and they gave us hope that there's going to be a curbing of double taxation and then support to us that are business people. Up to date, we are still waiting. And then I'm asking, when are they coming up with this? Because we, the traders, are suffering a lot from the hand of people, and the non-state actors. Then the second one, to the Matan person, what is your association doing to bring in member stakeholders together and ensuring that this, to ensuring that this comes to a success? Or do you have few numbers of stakeholders you want to work with? Please, that is my submission.
All right, Mr. Botenbola, can you respond to our caller in terms of your, collaboration with Matam and some of the products you are rolling out?
Yeah, thank you very much, Fred, for that question. So, question is, these multiple taxes, when do we begin to see them out of our ways? I can confirm to you that our work has started. Some are already going. Quite a number of those taxes that are being collected are also based on laws, either federal laws or state laws or edicts of local governments. And so they have to be repeated, and that will require some legislative action. But the essential thing is this: we have this presidential committee that is already focused, engaging with all relevant stakeholders at all levels to begin to eliminate one by one. The collaboration with MATAM is the driving force is how to eliminate the multiple taxes in the marketplace. So I can assure you that in a few months' time, if you listen to Mr. Oyedele, the chair of the Presidential Committee on Revenue, I said that the task of the committee is broken into three. That there are some that will roll in 30 days. Then there are some that will come in within 6 months. And then the last part will come in within 1 year. So we can see that we have a focused committee, we have focused timeline, and then the impact will start coming in. Now, Officer, if you permit me, let me just quickly react to one or two issues raised by Malam Idris. And it's very important so that we understand. Now, when we talk about personal income tax, I agree with you. The employment is low. But the truth is that the countries that are doing very well with personal income tax, they are not collecting it from workers. Because the PAYE, that's pay as you earn, contribute very little proportion. The main bulk of personal income tax comes from business people. And so, in South Africa that I use as an example, the bulk of their personal income tax was paid by 6% of the population. So, what is happening here? Our millionaires, our billionaires, how are our state able to manage them for them to pay tax? That is the question. Now, I agree we also need to help the subnationals. And FRS on its own is doing a lot. We provide training freely for them. We have training school in Abuja, and we bring them and we train them for free. Some of the chairmen of the state IRS are officers of the FRS that are released by the FRS to go and help in those places. There's this data for tax initiative wherein FRS is piloting the use of data by state IRS for tax purposes. FRS is shouldering about 80% of the cost of that initiative. So a whole lot that the service is already doing to assist the subnational tax authority. And then, yeah, I agree with you. Review tax law, FRS can take the lead, but then FRS can only make suggestions. The National Assembly has to buy in. The presidency has to buy in. And the Finance Act that we have had in the few years that we have had it, FRS have played a very prominent role there, but then Finance Acts are limited in what they can do. But then your comments are very fair and I agree, but I just needed to provide some information to clarify. Thank you.
All right. I needed to also perhaps react to what our caller, I think was Bright of Fred, who called in and said, I hope some of the, interactions you've had with FRS, are you being selective, or why have they not heard much about, some of these initiatives that Matan has been, championing?
Okay, so I think it was Fred that made that inquiry. So what I can assure Fred is that Matan and FRA, in terms of the status of the collaboration, is already full-fledged. It's been inaugurated in Lagos, I think, in June, and so very soon I can assure you that in your locality, in your market space, and all around you, you begin to see some of the deployments that we're already working on and making as we speak. Then also the second part of your question, which borders on whether or not we are collaborating with just few. No, we are collaborating all stakeholders. All market stakeholders are being brought on board, this initiative to drive, the effectiveness and ensure, voluntary compliance via the use of the incentives that, is embedded in it. So all the stakeholders, all market stakeholders, everybody is being spoken to, everybody is being harnessed into the collaboration, under the auspices of Matan, So I can assure you that you will soon begin to see some of these things, all around you.
All right, Prof, we've seen several initiatives in the past. You know, what could be perhaps, you know, what could upset the apple cart in this, you know, new phase? What could be the challenges based on your experiences, and what should they be looking out for in order to get concept to actuality?
Consultation, engagement of critical stakeholders, and then transparency, a higher degree of transparency. People generally want to work, but you don't engage them. And so, you know, you lose the potential for people to cooperate with you. A very amazing testimony from him and the Market Association. It just shows you the way forward, where you have that enthusiasm and is welcomed by the other parties, and you consider it goes engagement, and you know, people want transparency in the system, and that will take us very, very far in the implementation of this. And we get to a point where they is self-motivated, and then they drive it. We go on auto drive.
All right, Madam Shaibu, before I let you go, what should be your comments, your final comments on the program, where we were, where we want to be, where we are now? How do we pass a bridge through all these points and then to get to destination?
One thing is certain, and this is not patronizing in any way. We are lucky to have a president that is directing his energy and his thought as far as the economy is concerned, without necessarily being a bit, you know, maybe uncharitable. The immediate past administration didn't take economy as much as serious it should as the current administration is. My dear brother Matthew, we now have a president that has already even inaugurated a committee to look at these tax policies, tax situation, and what have you. If in the past you did not have, or when I say you, I don't mean you as a person, I mean by IRS, you didn't have a conducive environment or atmosphere to make suggestions of some, you know, amendment to the tax rules and regulation. Now we have the opportunity to fast track that. Again, with the kind of National Assembly that we have, you know, the leadership of the National Assembly appear to be business friendly. So, you know, passage of some of these amendments could also be a little faster than ordinarily it should. Finally, I will still want to draw the attention of FIRS and all other government agencies. Whenever you are reeling statistics, please, you know, take cognizance of some variables that affect your statistics. Because some of us that we are analysts, we are onlookers, we are not in government, we look at those statistics and sometimes we take them with a pinch of salt, because we say if I take this variable into consideration, this statistic may not be where it is. Finally, I like your comment regarding what our wealthy individuals are doing. Like I did say at the beginning of the conversation, my first place of work was Board of Internal Revenue in my home state, Kaduna, and that was 1985, as an inspector of taxes in charge of direct assessment. I'm sure you know what I mean when I say direct assessment. So the high net worth individuals were under me, and I was asked to assess, you know, a fairly wealthy man by any standard. And by the time I put up my assessment, my boss asked me, am I mad? Why should I ask this big man to pay so much? And the file was eventually taken away from me. What am I trying to say? I'm lending credence to your position that, you know, tax avoidance, tax evasion in this country is enormously high. And again, to buttress the position of Professor Ken, technology will help us to reduce the leakages, to widen the tax brackets, and to enhance efficiency and reduce the cost of tax administration if we so desire.
Madam Shaibu, Mr. Matthew Banjubola, I wanted to ask you whether we could get that file back to Malam Idris so that you can still work on it, but I'm sure it's no longer of any use since we are, everything is now online and all that. But let me ask you, let me get your final, thoughts on the program today, especially since your body is the one that will be, overseeing much of this, in due course. So what are your comments finally to Nigerians? First, confidence in the, perhaps building confidence in this process and, getting more people and more buy-in into the entire process.
Thank you very much, Fisaya, and thanks, Madam Idris. I think I've really enjoyed your line of thought, which is very thought-provoking. Thank you very much, Professor Ken. I think for us in Nigeria, one, we must understand that Nigeria is not as rich as we think we are. We have this erroneous view that Nigeria is very rich. We are not as rich as we are. And so we must then move away from the state of poverty to prosperity. And one thing that can help us, can help our government in the path that we take us there, is if all of us are tax compliant. That is number one. Number two is that tax advocacy should be every Nigerian's business. So if your neighbor is not complying, you have a duty to speak out. Number three, Professor Ken, I agree with you, technology. But we need to invest because it costs a lot of money to put in place working and workable technology. So my advice, my shout out to all our government at every level is to please invest in tax administration so that we can begin to grow our revenue. And then lastly is we must be bold to begin to harmonize our tax systems so that we can make it simple, transparent, and we make it clear and working for all. If we put all of this into place, then the 18% target for tax to GDP ratio will be a very child's play. I believe the government is doing the right thing. The committee, we should support this committee to work and to be able to achieve the goal for which it is set up. I believe that there is light at the end of the tunnel for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Banjubola. And finally, Professor Ken, a few short words before we go.
Well, I think we've spent a lot of time looking at the tax reform and how to increase tax revenues and all of that. But also don't forget that much of this pressure is coming from the debt sustainability issue, that we incur so much debt and then there's so much repayment that we are even borrowing to pay salaries, and so that's put this on the front burner. We also need to look at how responsible we are in our borrowing regimes and how we are failing to ensure that what you borrow is capable of paying back. And that gap continues to exacerbate the tax situation.
Thank you very much. That is the program. Many thanks to our discussants, Professor Ken Ife, development economist, and a very good friend of the program. Thank you very much for coming. Mr. Donald Ibe-Wun, National Legal Advisor, Market Traders Association of Nigeria, Martin. You've enriched this program with your insight, and even many of us are just getting to learn some of the collaborations you've had and getting, and that moving forward will actually increase people in the tax net. And of course, Malam Shuaibu Idris, Managing Director, Timeline Consult, and of course an expert in the field. Thank you for your interventions. Perhaps I will probably forward, if you permit, Mr. Banjubola's number to you, because this discussion you've both enjoyed yourself. Maybe we might continue later in the day. And of course, Mr. Matthew Banjubola, Director, Coordination and Compliance Federal Inland Revenue Service. It looked as if the name was Tasking, but it's actually at the end I paid my taxes to get it across the line. Thank you very much for being a part of Tuesday Live for today. Many thanks for you, those who called also to be a part of it. My name is Fisal Gunfi, thanking you for staying tuned. All the best. Enjoy the rest of your week and keep on watching the Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's finest and best, for news, reviews, previews, and interviews. Good morning.